Hello, everyone. Dr. Tim with you for the De-Escalation Lab. Wanted to touch base on something that I know a lot of you have been hearing about, and I've kind of been waiting to see how it plays out before talking about it. But essentially, it's New York City Mayor Adams and the completely misguided mental health agenda that he is floating forward to essentially go after the homeless population within New York. So let's talk a little bit about what it actually is, and then I'll give you some of my views and opinions on it. So here's what Mayor Adams' agenda really details. It's legislation that he's putting in for New York City, making the law that a person requiring care when they're mentally ill prevents them from meeting their own basic needs. There's a mandate that hospital clinicians consider a range of factors when assessing a patient's need for involuntary admission, including known treatment history and current ability to adhere to outpatient treatment services. Requiring hospitals to screen all psychiatric patients prior to discharge for their need to receive assisted outpatient treatment and/or court-ordered care under what New York City and New York State calls their Kendra law. We'll go into that in a little bit here. Allowing a broader range of trained mental health professionals to perform evaluations and community removals of individuals in crisis, and requiring hospitals to notify known community providers when their clients are admitted or released and collaborate with other communities providers to prepare for patient discharge. So let's break this down a touch more with some news coverage of it. This is CBS News, and this is what Mayor Adams said. My administration is determined to do more to assist people with mental illness, especially those with untreated psychiatric disorders, posing a risk of harm to themselves, even if they are not an imminent threat to the public. Remember that, Adams said Tuesday. It is not acceptable for us to see someone who clearly needs help and walk past. Far too long, there has been a gray area where policy, law, and accountability have not been clear, and this has allowed people in need to slip through the cracks. While emergency personnel already have the ability to involuntarily hospitalize those suffering from mental illness in certain limited circumstances, patients are often released after a few days when the imminent danger appears to be over. Adams says further, he believes the law should require hospital evaluators to consider not just how the person is acting in the moment of evaluation, but also their treatment history, recent behaviors in the community, whether they are ready to adhere to an outpatient treatment. He said he will work to have the new basic needs standards of involuntary admission written into state law. What he is proposing is for emergency services, EMS, fire department, police departments, to go out into the community. If they see someone that's homeless that may possibly look like they need help, to immediately be able to do an involuntary hold. So there's a voluntary, involuntary hold. We'll go into that in a second. But essentially, an involuntary hold, you take the rights away from someone. You say, you're going to the hospital today. Regardless of what's going on, he wants to pull homeless people off the streets, bring them to the hospital, and force them into treatment to include medications, groups, programs, and then attempt to get them into longer-term community care and medication adherence. Okay, so that's what he's looking at. So let's really discuss some views and thoughts on this. There's different reasons for mental health involuntary holds. So a voluntary hold would be, I'm meeting someone in the community or in the hospital. After talking with them, we determine together the best course of action is probably getting more help and support, either in a hospital setting or getting admitted to a psychiatric unit or facility. And they go, yeah, I agree with that. They sign a form saying they will voluntarily go into treatment. Involuntary holds, there's some reasons. Now, again, this differs from state to state, so go with your state guidelines. But in general, it's typically a danger to self. They have thoughts of suicide. They want to go forward with killing themselves in some capacity. A danger to others. They're making threats or want to go forward with hurting, killing someone else. And then the third realm is unable to provide for basic needs to include health and safety. This could mean a lot of different things. Maybe they cannot care for themselves in the sense of doing their daily ADLs, their hygiene. If they were left in a home, they would start a stove to make food and forget the stove is on and the house could burn down. They just don't maybe have the faculties to take care of their daily health and their daily safety. So there's a lot of gray area with that third reason for involuntary holds. Typically speaking, from a mental health perspective, we try to do the first and second reason for a hold because it's very clear, black and white, danger to self, danger to others. We can and do use the third involuntary hold method, but there needs to be some support with that, or it doesn't really hold up that well in a court of law. So examples of some of these involuntary holds by different states. So you may have heard California, you may have heard someone say 5150. That is the psychiatric hold in California. Florida uses the Baker Act, and then New York uses the Kendra Law. So a good example of involuntary hold in Florida recently was hurricanes. So there was a big hurricane moving in, and in this one city, there's a large homeless population, and typically the homeless population does not want to leave the area. It was going to be so dangerous and put not only them at risk, but first responders at risk, that they enacted the Baker Act to actually pull people off of the street involuntarily, hold them till the storm passed, and then release them. So there are good reasons to have involuntary holds, and they are needed. But when we start taking the rights away of individuals because they might not look safe to themselves, others, or their health, that's where a lot of people have an issue. There's a lot of organizations that are fighting this. It's currently in court. The judge, as of right now, is letting it go forward, this proposed plan. The mayor also reports up to 30,000 emergency services folks are going to be trained on how to do this. So stepping back for a second, typically a police officer has the ability to put someone on a voluntary hold. Specifically with state, but New York, emergency services does have the ability to put someone on a psychiatric hold. But they're going to get further training to review how to do it based on the homeless population. And what I've heard based on interviews with Mayor Adams is he's talking about using a Skype method where the responders are on the scene and they give a tablet to a homeless person, and that person then talks to a clinician, and the clinician's going to determine over the internet if the person should be involuntarily held or meets that criteria, or simply they're going to bring them into the hospital and it's determined based on the hospital what happens next. So as someone that worked as a mental health clinician for many years in the ER, police or even being brought in, I would assess them, determine if there's an immediate risk. Do they pose an immediate risk to themselves or their others? If not, I cannot legally hold them. What Mayor Adams is trying to do is change that. Well, they should be looking more into the history. They should be looking at adherence. It is very critical when you're assessing someone to learn about someone's past history. Look up notes if you have notes available. Were they just in a week ago with thoughts of suicide? Did they have a plan to end their life? Did they want to kill someone else? Is there documentation that they truly cannot meet their basic health and safety needs? So that is valid. But to dig even more to try to pull out information is just sick. It's sick, disrespectful, and now you're going to have professional emergency services walking through the streets, in the train stations, bus depots, walking on the road. If they see someone that's homeless that might look a little dirty, they might be able to involuntarily hold them because they look dirty. Well, they live on the streets, they're homeless. Maybe they don't want to take medications. At the end of the day here, if someone is not a danger to themselves or others in the sense that they don't want to kill themselves, they don't want to hurt or kill anyone else. And yeah, they might not have the best hygiene, but they're getting by. You have a right to not want care. You have a right to not want to take medications. And what this proposal does in New York City is take that right away from people. We've all seen someone homeless walking down the street. We've all seen that maybe their clothes don't look that great. Maybe they don't smell that great. Maybe they're mumbling or talking to themselves. Do I agree if someone is homeless on the street or anyone on the street and they are making threats, or they are going after someone, or they are walking into traffic, yeah, that's why we have involuntary holds. But to do this blanket of, well, anything goes, if they don't look great, if they don't smell great, if they say, yeah, I don't want to take medications, but yeah, I've had schizophrenia, I've been diagnosed with that. To take them away, they lose any possessions they might have, and then to put them in a hospital, to put medications down their throat, and then say, you're going to do treatment or we're going to court order you to do treatment. This is where I got issues with the people, and I'm fired up about it because it's ridiculous. So let's look a little bit more here. So not only does it affect the people that are being put on involuntary holds, but it creates a huge strain for the hospitals and first responders. Here's how. It's going to overload an already overloaded emergency department. Emergency departments typically are overloaded, especially in New York City. We still have a pandemic going on. We have the flu, RSV. We have a lot of things going on that aren't even talked about in the news, right? But hospitals are overloaded. So now we have to try to find beds. And Mayor Adams goes, oh, we'll make beds. And then we have our governor of New York saying, we'll find the beds. We don't have the beds. So now you're taking beds away and keeping beds because someone might look homeless and might not look like they're that great and doing well, even though they actually are. It's going to be very difficult to make someone continue care. So you're going to involuntarily, against their will, take them to the hospital off of the street. You're going to pump them full of medications. You're going to have them do therapy and treatment, whatever that may look like. And then they're going to have to sign some kind of agreement that they're going to continue treatment and continue taking meds, or maybe be court ordered to do that. So people that already typically don't trust the system are less likely to trust the system when they're being forced into treatment and will not want to even use city services. Last, but certainly not least, it's going to overload EMS, police department, fire department, and city services. It's going to overload them. Typically, New York City gets a lot of calls for help. And our first responders are already overwhelmed because of everything going on with the pandemic, everything they've had to go through, and their daily work. Now you're going to add this onto that. And they're going to really have to sit there and guess and go back and forth. Do we do this? Do we not? If we don't do it, are we going to get in trouble? Are we going to get written up? Are we going to get fired? So these are some of the other issues that we need to talk about even more. Hospitals, first responders really suffering because of this proposed plan. I've talked a lot about trauma-informed care, something I believe in, and this is not trauma-informed. Let's look at those principles again. Safety, trustworthiness and transparency, peer support, mutual self-help, collaboration, having someone feel like they have empowerment, voice, and choice in what gets to happen to them, and being aware of cultural, historical, and gender issues. None of this proposed plan ticks off any of those boxes. Maybe we can tick off safety, because when we think about it, there might be some safety issues. But again, we already have laws like this in place. So if we see the person on the street yelling, running after someone that's not there, or running after someone that is there, walking into the streets, banging on cars, destroying property, we already have the ability to try to get them help and talk to them. But trauma-informed care is lacking, Mayor Adams, in your plan. Absolutely lacking. You're taking people's rights away. And for what? What is the ultimate goal of this plan? It could be written and done in a way that actually helps people versus not. So that's where we are currently with this plan. It is in the courts because there's a lot of organizations, luckily, that are suing the city, suing the mayor to try to change this. As of right now, it's standing, but I heard in January or February of next year, there's going to be more court hearings about it. So I don't think the program is going to be implemented right away as it is currently in the court system. But if you don't agree with this, if you think this proposal and plan is just pathetic, reach out, call New York City, call your representatives, call representatives in that state, let them know that this plan is crap. We can do it differently. I've talked about the 6 steps of crisis negotiation. assessing a situation, seeing what's actually going on, building a rapport and trust with someone, actually trying to promote encouragement and hope with the individual that we're working with, listening to the problem versus ripping them out of it and throwing them in a hospital and locking them away. Start calming a situation. Help the person understand what solutions may be there for the presenting problem. Maybe there's a team that can go outreach to this individual versus locking them up in a hospital setting against their will. Try to work to help negotiate what's going on back to something that's good for them, back to a baseline. Maybe someone's baseline is they don't take meds, they're homeless, but they're getting by. They know where to get food, they are attending to their needs, and they're doing everything they need to do. It just doesn't fit the little box of what society is. And what is society nowadays? I don't think we know. We can't judge people. And the last of the 6 steps of crisis negotiation is be prepared to get additional help and resources. We may actually need to get someone to the hospital if we cannot keep a situation safe based on established mental health guidelines, protocols, and procedures that have been in place and that work very effectively. But if we're getting someone to the hospital involuntarily, we can still do it to help discover and foster empowerment and personal wellness of a person. Talk to them about why. Talk to them about how many ways we can try to get you to the hospital without involuntarily committing you, versus having a proposal where there's a blanket statement of, yeah, they're homeless. Oh, they look a mess. They look like they peed on themselves and they're off their meds. Let's take them in. We can do better. Society can do better. I don't know about all of you, even driving out on the road, society is not doing well. People are upset. People are pissed off. People are not calm. People are angry. People don't know where to turn. This is not helpful to the community. And this plan is not going to be effective, and it's going to hurt a lot of individuals. But I just wanted to bring up, there is a new crisis line number. It's now 988. It used to be 1-800-273-8255. Now you can pick up your cell phone, hit 988. If you press 1, you get right over to the Veterans Crisis Line. If you don't press 1, you get routed to your local state crisis line. There is also a press 3 option. It's very new, opened up this January, but it's for the LGBTQIA+ youth community. It's a new suicide lifeline that is going to be very impactful, very helpful. It's currently a trial run, but it's up, it's running, and my hopes is that it stays there. So you got me fired up. You saw me fired up, but it's because we don't want to involuntarily take people's rights away. We do it with the homeless population. That's really sad. What happens next? If I'm walking down the street and my shirt's untucked, am I going to be taken to the hospital now? If I'm having a bad day and I get really frustrated in the office, or I'm driving in the car and I pull over and I put my hands on my head and I just go, I'm really frustrated right now. Can a police officer down the road be able to take me involuntarily to the hospital because I don't look well? This is what we're talking about. This is the start of something horrible. So if you agree that this is a horrible plan, again, reach out. Reach out to people, reach out to representatives, reach out to New York City Mayor's Office, blow that phone number up, reach out and tell them how horrible this plan is and that we can do it in a better way that's supportive, that's trauma-informed, and that doesn't take the rights away from individuals. What we don't want to do is create more stigma in mental health. We don't want to call treatment centers asylums. We don't want to create more beds and court order people to take medication and go into treatment if they truly don't need it. We don't want to have to dig and dig like we're investigators to find something 5 years ago that we can use now for the person to hold them even longer. Guaranteed, if you put someone on a hold that doesn't need it, they are not going to trust the system. They are not going to trust care. They're not going to trust providers. And they're going to do everything they can to not follow through with whatever plan you develop as a clinician. I hope you were all well. Please stay safe. I will keep you updated with courts and how this goes down the road. Let me know in the chat what you think, and we will all talk together real soon. Thanks, everybody.